Deciding to fully fall into my creativity was one of the most confusing decisions I ever made. A seemingly straight shot to never having to work a day in my life quickly turned into the exact opposite, which has led me to the current position I am in now, being nowhere close to where I thought I would be as an artist. If you're listening to this podcast right now, chances are you and I have a few things in common, one of which might be being a creative. And as a creative, there are some things we can't afford to lose out on, and a very big one is energy. But not just any energy, something clean and natural that doesn't leave you crashed out in the middle of your workday. That is honestly why I use Magic Mind. It's an amazing energy elixir that is about the size of a shot that I take every morning to guarantee that I am fully prepared for my day. It's filled with amazing ingredients like matcha, ashwagandha, and lion's mane to fully support your body throughout whatever your day has to offer. Right now, if you go to magicmind.com/procrastination-radio and use code procrastinator20, you can get up to 56% off your subscription for the next 10 days. That's procrastinator20. You can get 56% off your subscription in the next 10 days. Let's get energized together with Magic Mind. I remember I remember coming out of high school and being so certain that I was going to make art for the rest of my life. I know for sure that I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I didn't want to let anybody else around me know that, especially my parents, because I was supposed to be going into college naturally that the year following. And I remember specifically having conversations with my dad, pointing to people like For Y'all Entertainment and Wong Fu and a bunch of other YouTube creators specifically that made me believe that I could take up space where they were. And that was a problem for me personally. I was struggling with social anxiety, and it was to the point where I wouldn't talk to people if they were in front of me. I would have no problem texting them or messaging them, but it was really hard for me to connect because I was overthinking so much about every word that I said, how that came off, and sent me into a really, really dark place that I didn't know if I wanted to repeat. And I didn't know if I wanted to do it so soon because I had just gotten out of a group of a bunch of people and I was going into another group of a bunch of people. And I didn't know if my mind was ready to handle all of that. So I made a few pleas that were at least listened to, but I ended up going to school. And I decided if I was going to go to school, I was going to do something I loved. And I was really passionate about screenwriting and directing. So I entered school for that. And there was a bunch of complications that kind of dampened the process, but that is college. And I was really dissatisfied with how I felt going to class. I had thought, for whatever reason, that it was going to be different and not schooly, but a time to grow into who I thought I wanted to become. I'm not sure the exact moment, but there was a time where I realized that that space wasn't for me and that I wanted to do something else. So I had a conversation with my parents and said, give me a year. And if I am not doing something creative, I will fully go back into school, pay for everything myself. It'll be on me because this is me taking a jump that I, at the time, was not prepared for. But when are you ever? You know? And so I sat there now out of school and having to make a decision as to what I was going to do. And I think the show was going on for a while. So I already had a hobby at the time that I could kind of rely on to keep me busy creatively. But I wanted something else uh, because I wasn't making any money. And so I started looking for jobs. And that was really hard for me also because it felt like a betrayal to what I was doing. It felt like a betrayal to my creativity, my creative process as I was trying to find it. Why would I give myself a distraction that would take time away from that and take time away from that incubus period that would later direct me to where I need to be? That didn't stop me from taking as much information as I could in, but it was a great time to learn the lesson that to be successful anywhere, you have to be flexible. And I don't even know if I want to use the word successful. I think it's just a good thing to be able to understand that sometimes the direction you think you're going in is not the direction you're moving in at all. And so I got this job at a grocery store, which I worked through the pandemic in. And I'll never forget my first week of working there. My two bosses came up to me and told me, like, hey, like, love your energy, love what you're doing. You have to talk to the customers. And I'm at customer service, so that's literally my job. Because of my anxiety, I couldn't do anything and was kind of in a really interesting place. So I was then tasked with this moment of literally being like, this is the only way I'm making money. I have to learn how to do this. So I had to turn my brain on in a different way that I hadn't before and really learn how to communicate with people. And again, that was one of the most important parts of my life because without that, I wouldn't be able to speak to people or communicate. And that's connect to people, even. That's the whole reason I do this is to connect to other creatives and to understand their stories better so I can learn better for myself. And so funnily enough, it became the place that I needed. It became a place where I could dually learn how to communicate to people and listen, and also got time to sharpen my skills and have financial support to buy things. I bought new mics, I bought new setups, bought new cameras, and all of that was really, really amazing to kind of curb that mindset that I was somehow stepping outside of myself and slapping everything that I had done before in the face to make money. And I feel like the artist relationship with money is really interesting. Um, and I think it always will be and always has been because there is that pull of what am I doing for me and like what am I doing to survive? And sometimes those things can be very far away, but I'll never forget this moment because the same dude that hired me a few years later when I got the job offer to work as a graphic designer full time, I very hesitantly asked to talk to him. And I was somebody who was always at work and doing my thing, so nobody really had to talk to me for any reason. So this was kind of a moment where he probably had a few questions himself. And I remember walking into his office and before I could even say anything, him being like, "You got another job." And the sheer I didn't want to disappoint him. I didn't want to disappoint him by leaving, and it felt like that, especially since he was the person that hired me. It felt like I was kind of letting him down. Um, and it was very hard to even have the conversation of getting another job, but it was something that I had always dreamed of being able to do what I wanted to do full time. He was like, I knew this was going to happen, and I'm very happy for you. And we basically had a very short conversation, but I will be forever grateful that that was how that conversation went. Because one, it showed me what kind of person he was, and it showed me that it was okay to do things for myself, even if they were scary. I left that job and started working where I am currently now, doing graphic design, video editing, and multimedia design, and ending up using all the skills that I had learned and gathered along the way in one place. And it was, again, nothing that I thought it would be. It was not this new leaf of new freedom and experiences and a bunch of money and recognition and all these things that I thought would come very quickly, but it was again a lesson to sit down and learn about what was happening in the world that I just didn't know about. I felt a lot of imposter syndrome because I was then again being compared to an industry that I didn't know existed. I didn't know what agencies were. I didn't know that there was a whole market for design. I understood that those things happened in nature, but there was no vocabulary for me to have. And it was very shocking how quickly, again, you become really small in those spaces, especially when there aren't a lot of familiar faces or not a lot of people who look like you, who sound like you, who are from where you're from. And it's hard to try to stand out as you're learning. So again, it put me in a different situation where I was again learning, felt like I was put down to the bottom of the totem pole, which is, that's how the corporate world works. Literally being called a junior designer. So me going from like, okay, cool, I'm the artist at the grocery store to being like, okay, you're the baby at this job was very interesting, but I'm so grateful for the attitude that I had because I just wanted to learn and wanted to get better. I think that came at a cost because I think I wanted it so bad, I just kind of forgot a lot about myself and things that I needed to do and things I needed to take care of and relationships that were important to me just because I was like, okay, I have to pay off another debt, which is this person who got me this job. I don't know what switched in my brain to make me aware of the fact that I had to be the driving force in all of these places where I was putting others first. And again, it's me listening to those voices and listening to people kind of dreamcast for me. And even if I didn't know where I wanted to go, I knew that something didn't feel right and that those things needed to change or I needed to leave. I think I'm in a period now in my life where I'm more aware of the things that I enjoy in life and the things that make me happy. And I think using that as a guide instead of relying on the idea of what I thought was going to happen, using more of my love for learning about people and communication and the very human art form that is design and music and literature and anything that is in the landscape of creativity and using that to drive me to where I need to be instead of my ego, because my ego got me into a lot of situations where I thought it would be a quick come up, or I thought it'll be easier. And I think being able to step back from even the situations I've recently been in where I've been tried and disrespected and misunderstood and disrespected. I think there's a lot of hurt I felt because it felt like even inside of doing the thing that I thought I loved, there was no space for me. And I think that being able to sit inside the moment and duly critique and be so grateful for the situations that I was positioned in was what really got me out of it. Because every time I would face a setback, I would just try to remember that this is something that is setting me up for something else. That this is something that is giving me an education in, again, communication, how people work, how people do this. And I think having the superpower of being quiet and listening really helped in all of that and really led to kind of figuring out exactly what I want. And first and foremost, that has to be for me to be happy and for me to find joy and for me to be able to not let any single person take what I love away from me. Because as corny as it is, as corny as it sounds, and not even corny, for a lot of creatives, like this is everything. And I think especially a lot of people in the corporate world, um, for whatever reason, look down upon passion and drive and are able to move and maneuver people by like belittling them and hello again. Um, I sat and watched most of that video and I realized I missed a very big portion of the ego death that I had to go through to realize that I needed to be okay with not being in control of every situation I was in. And I think to a degree, not being in control of a lot of things growing up and a lot of things emotionally and physically and a lot of other ways would lead you to want to control the things you're most passionate about or the things you spend the most time doing. And for art and creativity, that was the same exact situation. And I think that piece of a human or that need, that feeling that you have to do something one way or no other way is what can kind of break you in a lot of these situations. Being more specific, I think when there is no allotment of space for things to almost happen to you, for life to happen, I think there begins to be this thought that you are the reason that everything is happening and that there is no other way that anything could have happened outside of what was in your control. And I think the having the humility to be able to stand with other people who are going through similar things and are learning at the same pace or even further or behind or whatever, like you're learning with people. I think being able to realize that the control was the problem, that at every point I was trying to perfectly put pieces in order for me to be able to succeed. um you kind of just need that slap in the face that tells you, as cool as it is to try and forecast those things, unfortunately, the world doesn't work that way. And I think there are ways to move with intention and move into situations that you want to be in and work up to those things. I don't think a lot of those things are just laid in front of people at a rate which people can count on that. And I think, as said before, it just made sense in retrospect that I would need a bunch of time to learn how to do these things and a bunch of time to learn how to fail at these things, how to succeed, how to pick yourself back up after things went terribly, how to slow down and give yourself the attention you need and the adoration that you need. And because I feel like a lot of times we just move because we feel we need to be productive. And I think it's so important to just take time and appreciate where you are and not try to constantly go, 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 go. I think that kind of brings it back to the original analogy of just, and I think that when you get in that mindset, I think a lot of the productivity people and the kind of you have to be on 24/7 or you miss your moment. think wanting to live into that fantasy, I would say it's not for me. Trying to live into that thing that wasn't specifically for me, that wasn't explicitly for me, probably did a lot of damage to what I thought it meant to be able to sustain or support myself um, in any way outside of what I wanted to do. And I commend the focus. I think there just has to be a moment where you realize that nothing can be done by yourself. And that at every moment, you should be open to learning. And that way, I feel like instead of going down the road that will be lonely by yourself, you're meeting all these different people along the way and learning from them and passing other knowledge towards them that they might have not known. I think that way is much more comforting. I think, again, it's hard when from young you're told that this thing can't work out. And I know it's very different now because people talk about kids saying they want to be YouTubers or artists and all these different things. But I think even in then, I think there should be structure and information that can point people towards different spaces so that the journey of finding what you want to do doesn't feel so dark. It doesn't feel so meaningless. And I think walking into the situation with the awareness that it can all change within a moment is really the only thing that I think has gotten me to where I am now, where it feels like everything is finally where I could have sworn I would have gotten it to that first year out of high school. And it's so beautiful that it's still not there yet. And there's still so much I have to learn and still so much I have to make myself aware of and still so much that I have to and still so much that I have to make myself aware of and work on and begin to understand. And I think for that reason, that's why the journey is so confusing because I think you really don't. I think you want to know all the answers, but it's like you kind of just don't know the questions. That got me. This is getting me annoyed now because now it sounds like I'm just podcasting and trying to say words. But this is this is really a cool moment for me because I think this is I'm also having this conversation deeply with myself for the first time in a way. But yeah, I think it's a beautiful journey that many have taken. So of course, you kind of just have to be open to finding those people who can help you out and who can really impact your journey to where you want to be. And I wonder for anybody watching what that journey was like to kind of understanding how you wanted to go down this journey. And if you feel like it, leaving a comment down below to continue this conversation. Because I would love to hear. That's the whole point of this. I want to be able to hear from other people. And want to thank you for listening and encourage you to stop procrastinating because your dreams are out there waiting for you. Peace.